Now it's time to take a look at what's happening in the world of business this Thursday. Caris Garland from our business desk is with me in the studio. And Caris, there was a critical meeting on minerals here in Paris this Thursday. This as governments try to go more green.
Exactly. So the International Energy Agency that hosted this summit says that the world will need 40 times more lithium by the year 2040. And that's just to meet electric transport goals that are in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. It said the major challenge countries face is how to ensure more diverse supplies of these critical minerals, as well as how to increase recycling. Western countries are keen to reduce dependency on China, which accounts for almost 70% of rare earth production and has the biggest refining capacity. Oliver Farry reports.
The Paris Critical Minerals and Clean Energy Summit is seeking to address a growing problem for Western countries: how to secure a reliable supply of minerals needed to keep societies running. Rare earths and other critical minerals are used in many high-tech devices, particularly those needed for green energy transition, such as electric vehicles and wind turbines. Global demand for the four most commonly used critical minerals is set to soar in the coming 17 years, with 40 times the reserves of lithium, 20 times cobalt and nickel, and 3 times the amount of copper required. One of the most pressing concerns for Western countries is to wean themselves off a reliance on China, which dominates the refining of critical minerals, processing 67% of the world's cobalt, 62% of lithium, 60% of manganese, and 32% of nickel. Western countries are hoping to source metals from so-called responsible countries and also to recycle metals found in used electric car batteries and wind turbines. France is putting its nuclear know-how to use to extract rare earths from nuclear fuel at its Alternative Energy Commission headquarters in Grenoble.
In the nuclear sector, we are interested in dissolving the fuel so as to be able to separate the elements of interest from those that are less interesting. We take the same approach with magnets, extracting rare earths from iron, for example, and then reusing these rare earths in the form of new raw material.
Japan and the United States have already made moves to diversify their supplies of rare earths. With new mining facilities taking from 7 to 20 years to get up and running, the European Union is in a race against the clock to secure new supplies.
The heads of several investor-focused groups and companies have written to UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to warn him against watering down climate policies. The group, which has more than $1.5 trillion in combined assets, urged Sunak to reconsider a move to delay the phasing out of new petrol and diesel car sales. The plan, which was confirmed in a government timetable this Thursday, bans new combustion car engine sales in 2035 rather than 2030. While announcing the move, the Prime Minister said he wanted to ease the unacceptable costs on British households. The heavily indebted Chinese property giant Evergrande says its chairman is suspected of committing crimes. It comes after trading of the company's shares was suspended earlier on Thursday and after reports from Bloomberg that founder Hui Gaiyan had been put under residential surveillance. Evergrande is at the center of China's growing property sector crisis. At the end of June, the developer estimated it had debts of around 310 billion euros. There are fears now about what its financial troubles mean for developers, China's economy, and the Chinese families who are waiting for their homes to be built. Germany's inflation rate has dropped to its lowest level since the start of the war in Ukraine. According to preliminary data, the consumer price index was up 4.5% in September compared to the same period last year. That's down from 6.1% in August. It will come as a relief to the European Central Bank after an aggressive campaign to raise interest rates. Meanwhile, Spain's inflation rate accelerated in September, boosted by the soaring cost of energy. Preliminary data showed the figure rose to 3.5% year-on-year compared to 2.6% in August. While Spain boasts one of the continent's lowest inflation rates, its central bank recently boosted the outlook for this year and next. Taking a look at the day's trading action now, and stocks have risen on Wall Street, trying to make up for this week's steep losses. The Dow Jones is up about 1/3%, the S&P trading 0.6% higher, and the Nasdaq up about 0.75%. Well, there's outcry from Paris airports and French airlines after Emmanuel Macron's government unveiled a plan to tax transport infrastructure companies. The levy is part of a bid to put the environment at the top of the financial agenda after the government laid out its 2024 budget bill. Georgina Robertson has more.
Turbulent times ahead for the big air carriers. Following Wednesday's finance bill, Air France's CEO took to the airwaves to voice her anger and warn of the unfair competition it would create.
The problem with the proposed bill is that only the big airports are concerned, i.e. the Parisian airports, Roissy, Orly, or the larger airports in the rest of France, where Air France and the French air carriers mainly operate. But smaller airports like Beauvais, used by foreign low-cost operators, are not affected because they do not reach the bar for air traffic or turnover.
The bill will make a 4.6% tax applicable to the revenue of key French transport companies. The company that runs Paris's main airports says that if the bill is passed in its current form, it would reduce the group's earnings by €90 million in 2024. They say that they would transfer part of this new tax to airlines by raising the latter's fees over a 2 to 3 year period. A French government minister used a different channel to defend the proposals.
We are not putting up taxes, but we're allowing one thing. It is to make our proposals greener, to ensure that our finance bills are coherent with our environmental ambitions. It is a tax on the major polluters in transport infrastructure in order to finance carbon reduction and greener transport like the train.
This bill will be submitted to the National Assembly for debate before the 3rd of October. With rising fuel costs, this will be another financial burden in a highly competitive market.
Well, that wraps up the business news for now. I'll be back a little later with another update.
Thanks very much. Caris Garland for us there with the business news.